Hi, so after a little bit of break, I got back to reading this book and I'll continue with my career project. So this book, My Life by Bill Clinton. Today I read so much. I took so much notes, so it's gonna be a long video again. So I'm just gonna start right now. So this time, continue with last time. This time he first talked about Russia. So not very long ago, Russia become like not communist anymore, and under the previous President Bush, the G7, seven advanced countries, they together provided 24 billion to support democracy and economic reform in Russia. It says Clinton is Russian new president's fan because what he did is that his name is Yeltsin. I'll link here. So he climbed on a tank in front of Russian White House and said, "You may steal our freedom, but you will have to do it over my dead body." So he was like really brave, and Clinton really likes him. So he supported him, even though Yeltsin supports Bush. But Yeltsin, he destroyed the old system but had not yet been able to build a new one. And there is an economic disaster, which economic disaster can is means many things, like people fires employees because the economy is so bad. There is a failure in management of money going around and how the country is managed, and basic or any product including the basic product like food is the price of them skyrocketed, and bank refused to loan to nobody because they are afraid that no one can pay them back, and so normal people cannot buy houses and cars without a lot of savings, and public transit and healthcare and services, government services like police is all really really difficult, really not very efficient because of bad management of money and economies. So that's economic disaster. My thoughts on it is that replace communism with capitalism overnight is bad. You cannot do that. It has to be gradual. You have to consider everyone's lives to slowly, like, towards a better life, a better policy, little by little, so that, like, you won't like change the bank system or change how you manage the country, and everything's out of hand and people lost their life savings, people lost everything, and then lost their homes, and just like disastrous, like, so you don't want to like be so suddenly, you want to move gradually, if even if not communist, even if your country have bad policies, you have to like one step at a time to make it better and better. Okay, so during Clinton's presidency, he met with Yeltsin 18 times, and he stick with Yeltsin when he's facing difficulties and got a support of $1.6 billion from like American money to direct aid to help Russia stabilize economy, include housing for decommissioned military officers, positive work programs, food and medicine for those suffering, aid to support small businesses, independent media outlet, non-governmental organizations, exchange programs to bring tens and thousands students to US. So all of these things that they're trying to do. And while I talked to Yatsen about it, Clinton and his team described the support not as assistance, but as cooperation. So, and then move on to Bosnia. So there is a conflict between two religious parties in Bosnia, which is Croats and Muslim. I'll link the spelling up here. There is a lot of violence and human rights violation, mostly killing Muslims. The UN and France had tried to help. So Clinton and his team did a review on Bosnian policies and showed support. What they did is that they decide to intervene with military and humanitarian aid to stop the suffering. UN approved it before they take action, and the goal was to stop violence. Bosnian Serb leader hoping to avoid the airstrike because there's like airstrikes from the US. So they finally signed UN peace plan and stop killing the Muslims. And the Britain and France tried to help too because they worry if Serb take economic hit to the tough sanction, which is the punishment, like financial punishment, they will continue to aggressively um, do ethnic cleansing, which is to kill Muslims, and cause another 250,000 Bosnians to die. So they estimate this many will die if they continue this. So my thoughts on it is that weakness and uninclusiveness and incompetence causes violence. Because you are incompetent, you cannot manage the country, so that's why everybody is violent. Because you're weak to do what is right, because you're not strong enough to smart enough, strong enough, which is weakness, right? To let your citizens believe in the right thing. That's why you cause violence, to use violence to feed onto people's anger, to people's extreme emotions because people are triggered, or people are naturally just feel that when they treat it unfairly, or there's conflict, or people don't believe in what they believe in, they got emotional and they want to the other party to die, and the government is weak to persuade the citizens to believe in the right things, to lead them onto the right path. That's why they are trying to please these citizens. That's why they go kill these people. That's also a source of um, violence and uninclusiveness. Because the environment is uninclusive, that's why people can't tolerate each other. That's why they kill each other. So that's my thought. So, anyways, and then back to economy. So Clinton then worked on expand trade, increase investment in education and training, work on microeconomic troubleshoot. And microeconomic troubleshoot is basically small, like people everyday lives of like things like welfare, small business, jobs, technology developed by companies instead of government. So these like smaller things are micro instead of macro. Macro is the bigger picture. It's like maybe how the country's doing, how the economy is doing, but instead of the smaller things is micro. And then there's something funny. So Bill Clinton gave Fulbright, which he really likes his mentor, got a Presidential Medal of Freedom when Fulbright is 88 years old. And then Al Gore's father said, I'm only 85. And then Fulbright's like, Albert, if you behave yourself, you will make it too. So I think that's kind of funny. It's like a little funny moment in all these serious death, the violence things. And then media is saying, oh, you're always focusing on gay rights. Remember last time I was saying Clinton is like to live and let live, and then to say we should not persecute gays. And the media is like, oh, you're always focusing on gay rights, and they promote Clinton's gay rights everywhere. So Clinton reflected what my life is about back then. What he did in the first 100 days of his presidency is 50% on economy and healthcare, 25% on foreign policy, and 20% on other domestic issues. So I guess gay right is a part of the domestic issue. And then there is a problem. It's something small but expanded to something that's so big, so bad. So he asked a hairdresser to give him a haircut while he commutes somewhere because his hair is a bit long and he doesn't want to spend extra time to go and get a haircut because he's very busy. He really wants to get things done, right? So he invited him to the Air Force, to the plane on the way to get somewhere to work, and he get a short haircut. And the media says that he got a $200 haircut, and it's everywhere on the news. It was greatly criticizing he got a $200 haircut. It's so bad to a point that it affected the travel office's affair and it caused someone to go to jail. It's this bad. In order to solve this problem with the media problem, Clinton's team and Clinton together decide to run White House press like a campaign. So they reformed the communication office. And Clinton reflected that people don't follow leaders but follow the leakers. So that's how he reflected. And then they talk about how Iraq planned to assassinate President Bush, like the previous president, and Clinton ordered military action to arrest these people. And something good happened. There are 950,000 more Americans have found work during his presidency. So isn't it a good thing? And then there's the G7 in Tokyo, Japan. So he goes there with agenda to get European and Japanese leaders to align their international economic policies. But it feels like people don't want to cooperate with his agenda because everyone is either don't respect him enough or worried about their own life. But Bill Clinton was optimistic. He says, because I was bringing a strong agenda to the meeting, I believe it can help them to get out of trouble at home. And the G7, all countries are committed to help Russia. Germany lower interest rate. Japan decide to open border to foreign trade. And Japan and America come to an agreement in economics. So he feel the G7 is a triumph. And then something very bad happened. So remember, like Clinton got a $200 haircut, and it was greatly criticized by the media and caused him to go to jail. It caused one of Clinton's friends to kill himself, so he died. Because he was torn by the news written about Clinton's haircut, he feels like really, really bad, and he wrote in his journal, I know it sounds funny, but it's not funny. It's serious. Someone died, and then he wrote in his journal, "I was not meant for the job in the spotlight of public life in Washington. Here, ruining people is considered sport. The public will never believe the innocence of Clinton." And then so Clinton reflected on his friend that he rooted in the values of honor and respect and uprooted by those who valued power and personal assault. And I think that's completely right. The media is horrible. They didn't consider these vulnerable people. And then there is the American legend boy nation senators visiting the White House, which I'll link the sentence, the name of this thing here, which is a program that offers high school juniors a hands-on experience in government and leadership. So his team, his like worker Al Gore, told the boys if they shook hands with Clinton, take photos, the photo might be handy one day. So Clinton shook hands and posed for pictures with all of them, and in 6 of the 8 years in White House. Hope some of those photos turn up in their campaign ads one day. So he was like really supportive to these kids. And then he enforced law on what he promised, which is tax cut and tax increase. To pass the law, in 435 of the House of Representatives, 218 have to vote yes, and the law was passed. And then they talk about the Palestine and Israel issue. So here is what happened. So I'll quote here: Palestine finally renounced violence and recognized Israel's right to exist. In other words, back then, before, Palestine don't recognize Israel's right to exist and are violence towards them. So that's their history. And then so Israel leader quoted the Old Testament back to the Palestine. He says, "We are destined to live together on the same soil, the same land. Enough blood and tears, enough. To plant a tree, to love, to live side by side with you in dignity." This is what the leader of Israel said. And the Palestinian leader chose kind gestures to Israelis, but tough words to reassure doubters back home. So that's on the back then they finally come to peace. And then it comes to talk about Canada, Mexico, NAFTA, and Clinton supported it. And then they talk about healthcare and AIDS. And towards AIDS, Clinton and his team says preventing is the solution. And then the economic healthcare plan, Clinton and his team's thoughts on it is our system costs too much and covers too few. And he and his team's principles are security, simplicity, savings, choice, quality, and responsibility. Everyone would have coverage through private insurer. And then later on, there's an update in this policy went. I will talk about it very soon, like in a few minutes. And then so these healthcare thing can really help everybody. They said an example, like a mother gave up a $50,000 job to take care of 6 of his children's health. One of his children is ill, and the mother end up in welfare. Like she was earning $50,000, which back then is a lot of money. She have to give it up because there's no health care plan, and then she end up on welfare. So, and then afterwards, Clinton want to clarify on a Russian issue. So he wrote it here. Because he supported Yeltsin, so he wrote it here. Duma, which is the lower parliament of the Russian White House, carrying communist flag and Stalin portraits, and fire rocket-propelled grenades into Russian TV station. Then next day, Russian military fires back at parliament building. Because the media and everybody was like, oh, Yeltsin like fired at like the Duma, and then so Clinton was saying because Duma fired a grenade at the government TV station first, that's why Yeltsin fires back at them. Yeah, so that's why. And then something very bad happened. So Somali warlord Aidid killed 24 Pakistani peacekeepers, then murdered UN forces who's trying to help. So the US troops in Somalia start taking action, but the Aidid forces fought back and attacked them, and 19 Americans were killed. And worse, Somali's warlord team dragged American soldiers' dead bodies around the street. I know this is a little graphic, but that's why Americans are outraged and astounded. They're very, very mad. And Clinton was also very, very mad, but still considered everything, and Clinton decided not to go after Aidid and send a person named Oakley on a mission to release the captured pilot. They did say something strong. They said, "We will not trade the people who had just been captured." So they will not trade with Aidid. That means you have to release him. So my thoughts on it, and Clinton was really haunted by this whole thing, and continues to always be haunted by it. And my thoughts on it is that Clinton chose to save lives. He's think, what can save the captured pilot, because he can feel how scary it is to be captured by a violent organization like this, and he wants to save this person from this dangerous situation to safety, save this American pilot soldier person. And he decide not to feed on his anger and say he will attack on Adid. Instead, he say he will not attack on Adid, so that this person can be saved and released back home. So that's Clinton's value. And so afterwards they started implementing the healthcare plan. There are problems. So earlier I said I would come back to the economic healthcare plan. So there are problems with the mainly with the private insurer. So the health insurance companies put up misleading ad saying government healthcare plan only have a few options, and which is very misleading. The insurance companies want to keep the profit of an inefficient and unfair system, take advantage of how American people is skeptical to any government actions. So they're just taking advantage of people's skepticism towards the government, and like in Canada, like my thoughts is in Canada, Like the whole healthcare is like a government thing. It's like it's not through insurance, but I guess this way private healthcare like medication like scientists won't be as motivated because like in a free market their inventions their laboratory research worth a lot of money. If it's all government funded they might lose like momentum. Maybe that's why US does it in privately, these like these studies, these science. But I'm not sure. Time will tell what is right. And so there is so next topic, there are some more accomplishments. I'll quote here: capital gain tax cut for small businesses, which I think there should be some incentive for big companies too, because back then I worked for big companies. There's a lot of socializing and it feels really good. And if big companies go bankrupt, then or they have very high standard because they don't want to hire a lot of people because they're not doing so well, then there will be less people who can benefit from working in a big company and just feel like the really prosperous like socializing environment of working in a big company. So I think big companies should be incentive you should have some incentives too. Yeah, but that's my thought. Next policy, childhood immigration initiative. So encourage people with kids to come to America so that kids can grow up in America, freedom and student loan reform. And then more, also improve national service, the Russian aid package, the family leave law, the motor vote bill. Okay, so the motor voter bill is that people can register voting through updating their driver's license. Also, people can mail in votes, which I disagree with the mailing part because anybody could mail in. Like someone can mail in for someone else, you know? And not only that, like if the voting counting system is not advanced enough, people can go in person to vote and then mailing a vote and then it will take longer to say, oh, you voted twice. Yeah, so I think you should go in person and check with the driver's license, the photo, to make sure it is the person coming to vote. But I do agree with how like they set more areas to vote and people can vote more easily. That I really agree with. And then the next one, it's like having really good results even after he's not in office anymore, it still have good effect, which is background check for buying handguns. And then another one is protect religious liberty and separate church from state. And then Clinton have another reflection. It says here, in politics, if you don't toot your own horn, it usually goes untooted. So I think maybe that's why Clinton wrote the book, because he wants to toot his own horn. Because if you don't like announce what you did, no one's gonna know what you did. Yeah, and then people won't be educated. So maybe you should announce what you did. And then more quotes from him talking about why he had such a bad reputation. So here it goes. There are no kudos from colleagues for positive stories. Network news media face more competition from cable channels. Republicans also deserve credit for his poll rating worse than his performance. So these are some sources of his bad reputations. And then Bill Clinton made a speech on his reflection towards what Martin Luther King would say. So here I will quote here what his speech is including, "I fought for freedom, but not for the freedom of people to kill each other." And more quote, "Where there are no families, where is no order, where there is no hope, who will be there to give structure, discipline, and love to these children?" So I think I'm very touched by like his speech. And so next topic. And then he went to organizing Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, which Europe has already done it first. What he did is meet with new Japanese prime minister, meet with Chinese president, and invite Korea president over to White House. And also he achieved permanent extension of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is also short NPT, which expires in 1995, which is to stop the spreading of nuclear weapon and trying to disarm nuclear weapon, trying to like not have nuclear weapon anymore, and then use nuclear power for the benefit of people's lives. So that's the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. But right now, the second one, to completely disarm, is like a little bit hard for people who already have nuclear weapon, because the world is not a completely peaceful place yet. But we are trying to approach world peace so that one day we don't need nuclear bomb anymore. Okay. Oh, this is so long. It's how much I read today, and stay tuned for my next video.